What do we think about survival of the fittest? The philosophers down through the ages pretty well discussed this phenomena as to why they were the aristocracy and why they controlled things. And they came to the conclusion that they were just naturally, physically, genetically, I suppose, superior and more cunning. Intelligence to them really is a form of cunningness, an ability, an innate ability to pull the wool over someone's eyes in order to get them to do something which they thought they knew the purpose of, but really was to benefit the elite themselves. It's a form of trickery by clever persuasion, where those who do the gopher work never really realize that that's what they are. Darwin himself, who brought forth the same doctrine, survival of the fittest, which is just an ancient form of Hindu philosophy, really, which is based on a caste system. Again, a caste system of interbreeding of certain family gene pools and keeping the wealth and the structure of power within families. Today we have sociologists who have written screeds of stuff on different levels. Everything's written on different levels. So you'll get your high school level sociology where it's not too bad. It tells you basic things about human psychodynamics, group psychodynamics, social psychodynamics, how people work in big groups. But they don't go into the power structure at the top, really, of these big groups in any detail. On a higher level at some universities, they'll go into that with a little bit more honesty as to how it's set up. That there is actually a dominant minority, that Huxley called them, who set forth most of the agenda. But if you get into the really elite schools, the Ivy League type schools, you've got a lot of the offspring of those particular dominant minority families attending, and so they can afford to be more truthful with those students. Margaret Thatcher put it very well when she put public funding towards private schools, the big private schools, because she said that's where the future leaders of this country in politics and economics and the military, etc., will come from. And she was telling the truth. These are basic truths. They get to know each other, they get to know their own generation that they'll be mixing with their whole life. So they make the acquaintances, and one will become a banker or the head of a group of banks, and he'll know the guy who's a general in the military, and he'll know the politician that's the prime minister, and etc. That's how this whole network runs, the old boy network they call it. And it's in every country. It's no different. It doesn't matter where you go, it's the same structure. In the Soviet system, 200 families basically came in to Russia prior to the revolution and took over. Many of them weren't even Russian. And those same 200 families and their offspring still run Russia today. You'll find the same in China. Ancient families, wealthy families, were not killed off in any revolution. On the contrary, they became often the leaders of the revolution, and they still hold the positions of power to do with internal finance. He who controls the finance controls the country. There's a famous statement made by Rothschild when he took over the Bank of England. He said, "Give me the power of over the money of the country. I care not who makes the laws, because the reason being, the guy who makes the money for the country is the law of the country. Everybody comes to him." minister and president must go to the big bank and get his marching orders, and he must then dictate policy to suit those instructions according to debt and credit. That's how the whole system works. So the big boy controlling the money, since the entire pyramid of the country is from the bank down, central bank down, then obviously everyone is subservient to the guy who controls the bank. The big bankers, the internationalists, can make or break any country if they get two or three of them together. George Soros, who was picked up by the Rothschilds from Europe to create the NGOs that appear to be grassroots organizations which demand policy changes from politicians. Mr. George Soros plays this kind of game on behalf of his masters, and he had a half a page in the Daily Mail in Britain a few years ago when he and two of his friends, he said, got together and crashed the stock market for Britain. The British government had to therefore go to the bank to value the pound, borrow it, charge the taxpayer for it, because that's how debt is paid off. The taxpayer and their offspring are put down as basically the collateral to pay off this debt. That's the guarantee. The guarantor are the slaves. The slaves must pay off the debt. Thomas Jefferson, who was a member of the Illuminati, and it was well understood in his day he was, told you a truth, because the Illuminati will speak basic truths. It doesn't mean that they will necessarily be on the people's side. They'll just tell you a straightforward truth. And he said a person or a generation born into paying off the debt incurred by a previous generation are therefore slaves. They're not free. And in the modern system, every country under the democratic system is run this way. Every generation must pay off the debt incurred by previous generations. This also guarantees that the same power structure will be in place for as long as that debt is incurred. So the big bankers, the internationalists, are guaranteed to have their great-grandchildren running the system generations from now. It's quite simple. We know that money is made out of thin air, and has been really for an awful long time. That the Bretton Woods Agreement many years ago to do away with the gold standard. Not the gold standard, it was really for the bankers' benefit. It wasn't for the public's benefit, because the bankers already owned the gold of the world. They owned the mines where the gold was mined. Cecil Rhodes, who was set up by Rothschild and a few other bankers, was set off to South Africa to basically grab the wealth of diamonds and gold and silver and minerals for he himself and his masters, who were the bankers. So they'd already owned the gold system, but it took a lot of shipping, and it's not so cost effective to transport huge cargoes of gold between countries for trade purposes. And since these bankers have really been behind the free trade movement and the globalization efforts, stemming back to Britain in the 1500s, you'll find about free trade then, when they had the British Empire. They coined the term to bring in a trading bloc of countries where it had most favored trading status for nations. So to move vast cargoes of gold back and forth on a sea that sometimes was pretty rough and ships would sink, well, the bankers would lose, you see. So much, they always made it up, but they lost so much. So it was easier just to make money out of nothing. And that's when they decided to change the whole system, take it off any standard for their own benefit. And today they just print off the money sell debt. They sell debt. It's this oddest thing. They sell debt to people to keep the system going. And people own the debt incurred by your parents and your grandparents, and you, even though you didn't know you were incurring any debt, the politicians, it's their job, and the prime ministers, to sign you down as collateral each time they go cap in hand to banks. And this is what we call civilization and progress. When we look at this system, there's nothing in it that exists for the ordinary people. Everything is given to the public, including technology. We grab thinking, boy, this is fantastic. The computer is fantastic. The internet is fantastic. Even though Zbigniew Brzezinski told us why they were going to give us the computer and the internet long before the public ever heard of it, is to create a common culture, a system where they don't have to send out bodily spies to spy on everybody. They simply have everybody putting all their data through a computer, which the governments, by law, must be able to hack into at any time. That's done. That's over and done with. It's a done deal. Which also means that all the computer manufacturers build in certain technologies which you're unaware of to allow this to happen. Which also means that all the security software that you buy, by law, worldwide, must not be able to stop government agencies from coming into them. So they're all in cahoots, by law. People should go and see The Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino. Because in there, Satan, or the devil, who doesn't make anybody do anything they don't really want to do, is quite candid with it turns out to be his son. And he says, how are we taking over the world? And he's a lawyer. He runs the biggest law firm in New York in this movie. He says, by lawyers, we're turning out armies of them. Lawyers. That's how they're taking the world over. We think it's through battlefields. No, that's just the nitty-gritty stuff to take over the last remaining, what we call backward nations, the ones that have their own system. But really, the whole world is run by lawyers who understand the meanings of words. And if you go to court, you'll have two of them on a jousting field. That's where justice comes from, joust. Where the knights only could go on the field. If you're a commoner, you're not allowed on it. That's why you stand and you keep quiet. Whereas the authorized knight goes to be your champion, and he hopes to outsmart the other guy with his knowledge of words and previous laws and cases. And you're just a bystander while this is happening. As this little game of intellect goes on between the two jousters. So law is how it's done. Legality. Remember, legality also is related to religion, religio, to bind, to tie. And we're bound and tied by laws, most of which we're unaware of even on the books, or being made, or in the process of being made. But a powerful dominant minority, as Huxley said, has always existed. It's always been here, and as he said at Berkeley, in his speech at Berkeley, I presume it always will exist.